Welcome back. The time is 10 minutes to 9, and you're still tuned in to Salam Media with myself, Salado Makudir. Before we went to the break, we had a really, really insightful interview with Dr. Seth Cooper. He's the president of the Pan-African Psychology Union, a former political prisoner and leader of the Black Consciousness Movement, and a member of the 1970s group of activists that played a very, very pivotal role in the fight against apartheid. And we're talking about rather unfortunate, disappointing and disgusting sentiments that were shared online by now MP Ronaldo Kaus, who said, I don't even want to talk about it. You can check out the podcast of the interview. But right now, we're going to be turning our focus to a dire humanitarian crisis that's currently unfolding on the African continent as Sudan continues to be ravaged by civil war. The resulting famine is now forcing thousands to seek refuge across the border in Chad, with famine-like conditions affecting millions and the UN's efforts to provide aid hampered by severe funding shortages. The situation grows increasingly desperate. This morning, we're joined by Sudanese political commentator Dr. Abdul-Karim Elgoni, who will be providing us with an in-depth analysis of the situation, and we'll also discuss the implications of this crisis, the role of international aid, and what can be done to support those who are suffering. Dr. Abdul-Karim Elgoni, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to Salam Media.
Thank you very much, and thank you for giving more light to the problem in Sudan.
I think one of the things that's rather concerning for me is that the Sudanese conflict and the devastating humanitarian crisis that's currently happening is not that well documented, and a lot of people across the continent don't necessarily understand in depth what's currently happening in Sudan. If you can, just give us insight on the current situation, what's happening in Sudan, and give insight also on the humanitarian crisis that's currently unfolding. What's causing it? Who's fighting? What's the conflict all about? Just to give better understanding and context to those that might not understand.
Thank you very much. You see, the suffering in Sudan, the things that people are seeing in Chad or in Cairo or in Ethiopia is just the tip of the iceberg. You see, since the war started, this is the second rainy season, and the majority of people of Sudan, 70% of people of Sudan, are dependent on what they produce from a small agricultural land around their houses or around their homes. And this has been prevented by the war for two reasons. One of them is the insecurity. So people felt that even if I planted, I will not be here to harvest. But the most devastating thing is the participation of the youth in the war itself. Both parties are involving youth in the fighting, and there is no able hands to cultivate even the land where there is security, and this have created another problem, which is very bad for the Sudanese. So people have started using their surplus. There is another problem that came out about a year, almost about 6 months after the war. The government in Port Sudan decided to stop all the salaries of all government officials in areas that is not controlled. And most people are saying 75% to 80% of the population are living in the areas that are controlled by the Rapid Support Forces, which is Kordofan, Darfur, and the Jazeera area, which is the three most populous states after Khartoum, which is now, all Khartoum is now have fled into those three areas. So the majority of people who were dependent on the meager salaries, the salaries are no longer coming. Another problem that came out is about a month ago or about 6 weeks ago, the government decided it was following people who were funding activities in the areas controlled by the Rapid Support Forces. And it decided to confiscate all the monies in all accounts of traders and businessmen and people who are living in the areas of controlled by the RSF. And this have created a big problem for others, because now people who were helping others are no longer having money in their accounts. And this have impacted very badly on people. And the insecurity prevents people from going into those areas to bring live information from the areas. We get it through WhatsApp, through some when there is a service. So it is really very bad in most of Sudan.
And I think if there's something that's really concerning is just the stability in the region. Not just Sudan itself, because I think right now Sudan is the world's largest displacement crisis. There are almost 9 million people that have been forced to flee to other parts of Sudan or neighboring countries like Chad. Just countries that are now surrounding Sudan, like Chad, for instance, what kind of impact is this instability starting to have on them as more and more Sudanese are trying to find refuge in the neighboring countries, who themselves, are also facing economic and political instabilities? Just give us insight on the region itself and how this power struggle between the leaders of the Sudan Armed Forces and the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, has had on the region and not just Sudan itself.
You see, if you take, for example, Egypt. Egypt is now hosting almost 1.5 million Sudanese, and as you know, the borders are porous borders, and people go to Egypt through those porous borders, to the degree that 2 weeks ago, Egypt decided to do something that is completely not understandable. It collected all the people who entered through the illegal borders, those are refugees, put them into buses, threw them into Sudan back again. And until the UNHCR was angry with Egypt and said this is not right for a country to do. It tells you how much Egypt have suffered from the flow of the Sudanese who are coming into Egypt. The same is happening in Chad. About 1 million people are in Chad, and Chad is already a poor country. They are putting pressure on the local services, on the local foods, and of course the hygiene situation are very bad, and people don't have except 1 or 2 pieces of cloth on them. So the situation is very bad socially, it's very bad economically, and it is very bad security-wise. Look at Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, Sudanese have to flee out of the centers into the forest because the centers are uninhabitable. So those are just examples of 3 countries that, because the borders are porous, they could not take it anymore until things become so bad in it. So this is one of the consequences of war. You see, war does not provide anything other than suffering. And we as the Sudanese, we really appreciate the talk of the RSF. RSF, at least the leader of the RSF, is saying, if the government comes tomorrow to the negotiating table, and we are going to stop the war tomorrow. But unfortunately, the army is saying we are not going to stop this war until we kill the last soldier of the RSF. And this is really making Sudanese suffering. We pray that Allah guides the army leaders to accept and give us a humanitarian ceasefire, at least for 3 months, so that people can have a breathing. It's really very difficult for the Sudanese.
I think one of the most notable things, and I think just last week or about 2 weeks ago, we were just reliving this, is the fact that last year around this time, the African Union Peace and Security Council suspended the participation of the Republic of Sudan in all AU activities until the effective establishment of a civilian-led transitional authority, a government essentially, and this was supposed to be the only way to allow Sudan to exit from its current crisis. The African Union, do you feel like this was a good move by them, or it is one that has further plunged Sudan into the crisis that it currently finds itself? Because without the African mother body overseeing and intervening, they decided to distance themselves and ultimately saying, sort yourself out. What did you make of this move?
No, actually, the African Union did not distance itself. It is in the middle of this war. It is trying its best to convince the Sudanese to come to the table, and they supported the Jeddah discussion table that people are promoting, and even they did whatever they can do. As you know, they don't have strong teeth to bite, and those army officers, they think they are born to govern their people even by force. And if you want to take them off, you have to take them by force. And this is not the time to add oil to the already hot fire in Sudan. So there is no other way other than putting pressure on the government. It is not only the African Union that is putting pressure on the government. The United States, the European Union, the UN, they are all pushing the government to come to the negotiations table, because they know whatever the war prolonged, it will always end on a negotiations table. So it's better do it today than tomorrow, after adding more disaster to the lives of people, to the infrastructure, to your neighbors. So the African Union is doing the right thing. We hope that what the African Union is doing can push the army officers to agree to a ceasefire, even a humanitarian one for a very short time, but they are refusing completely. I think they are scared. You see, there are some Sudanese who are saying, let us do the undoable. Let us say to the army officers, whatever you have done to us, we will forgive you for it. We will never take you to court. We give you full amnesty. Please leave government. Maybe this will entice them to do the right thing. But while they are here, they are scared that whatever, if change that comes, will take them to court and they will spend the rest of their lives in prison, and they are scared of this. This is one part. The other part is that they have been stealing from the coffers of government for the last 30 years. And they have millions of dollars in so many countries, and they are scared. If the system changes, they will also lose all those resources. So they have to fight to the end. Yes, it's better they die standing than die in prison. This is another argument that people are putting and asking the Sudanese to please forgive, don't forget, but at least forgive, so that we can get out of this pit that we have fallen in.
Just a few days ago, the Sudan government has accused the United Arab Emirates of arming, the paramilitary force, and saying, them and Iran are the ones essentially arming, the rebels that they've coined. How true are these allegations? Have you taken a look into them? Is the UAE and Iran fueling this war?
Let me put it to you this way. The Sudanese government have put those claims forward that the RSF is supported by the UAE, but there is no proof whatsoever of that. They have been asked to put proof forward. They couldn't put any proof forward. When you ask the RSF tells you, we have captured more than 20 army barracks, and we have enough ammunition and guns and bombs and whatever you need to fight with. We have more than what we need from the government. We don't need to ask UAE or Chad or any other, Russia or anyone else to assist us with more. We have more of them, and we have enough youth to fight for us. The fact is that the government have re-established relations with Iran, and Iran have definitely supplied government with armament that was captured in battle, support given by Iran. There is also proof that the Russians have given the army some military support. There is proof of it, but there is no proof that the RSF have received. It is said, we believe that it is what we can. There is, you can say that the UAE has long relationship with the RSF, because RSF is fighting with the UAE in Yemen. And people are saying, because they have been working together in Yemen, most probably UAE will support the RSF. But there is no proof of that. It is just these conditional assumptions. But we hope that if there is support or there is no support, we as Sudanese, all what we are hoping for and calling for is that the two parties stop the war. We are, both of us, We are supporting the stopping of the war. We don't want to support the government army. We don't want to support the RSF. We wanted to support the peace. And we hope that South Africa's stance in support of the peace is the right stance, that we are hoping that they push more for it. And we hope that the new government in South Africa will give a space for the problem in Sudan. Because if this problem has not stopped, it will fire back in many African countries who are not giving it a impact. As you can see now, when the Egyptians and the Chadians and the Ethiopians, the neighbors of Sudan, were not fully serious in helping the two parties to come to terms, the population, the problem flooded into Ethiopia, flooded into Egypt, and flooded into South Sudan and Chad. We hope that we pray for peace. We hope that this peace will happen, and it's better to happen today than tomorrow.
Inshallah, we also hope that peace does reign in Sudan. We're going to leave it there. Dr. Abdul-Karim Elgoni, thank you so much for giving us your time and giving us insight on the devastating power struggle, war between two armies who right now it feels like they don't care about the people, but it's more about keeping power for themselves and protecting their own interests. And this at the demise of the population of Sudan, a very beautiful African country that deserves to thrive. But thank you so much for giving us your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I hope that the NGOs in South Africa, like Waqful Waqifin, which have done a lot of good work for the refugees in Egypt, will do more for those who are in other countries also. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was Dr. Abdul-Karim Elgoni giving us insight on the current humanitarian crisis. Well, human-induced humanitarian crisis that's currently unfolding in Sudan. Millions are starving. Millions are fleeing. About 9 million people. Imagine. 9 million people fleeing their country. And this is obviously now starting to affect the neighboring countries who are saying we can't take it anymore. The likes of Ethiopia, Egypt, Chad, saying we can't take in any more refugees. And I think, it's time for bodies like the African Union to be a bit more forthcoming. And the warring sides themselves, you can't kill each other and finish off each other. It's not plausible. Have we not learned from the different atrocities that have taken place throughout history and throughout recent history specifically, that at the end of the day there are no winners when it comes to war? All sides, especially when it's a civil war, all sides ultimately suffer, and there's no country to win after that. There's no country to govern. It all goes down in flames. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be taking the news with Zaid Chedwat, Salam Media News. What you need to know, what you need to know, and how you need to know it after this.